I didn't know that. I said, you're going to kill everything in my pond. The fish aren't going to live. Well, I did have a fish kill in May of '07. But it didn't kill all the fish. But you won't dare eat the fish out of that pond now, which we always did. So that changed everything. But back to the fellow that came out when I reported the pond being contaminated. He said, Ron, your farm has been a textbook case of what not to do. We've got an album at the DEP's office this thick of photographs, and your name has been brought up in more meetings. Well, now that man who worked for a regulatory agency, the DEP, now works for industry. And guess who he went to work for? Range Resources. Well, when I did a file review about 6 months ago, I did my first file review. Just to see what's in my files, I should say. Because I reported a lot of different problems here. When I got there, and they had a few folders out, and I said, where's the album full of photographs? There isn't an album. I said, what do you mean there isn't an album? I said, so-and-so said that there's an album. He doesn't work here anymore. I said, I know where he works. He said, and I said, I was walking with the man when he was taking pictures with his digital. I said, well, I guess it's a good thing that I was taking pictures before he came. Once I started to learn, started trying to figure things out because no one was helping me. And then when I went through my files that they had there, they were absolutely a joke. They were totally inaccurate, and all the problems that I had with the pond, they weren't even in the file.
Do you feel like files have been removed?
Could have been removed. They could have been removed, or they never filed it. That's my guess. Because that's what a lot of people around here found that have done file reviews, and people out in eastern Pennsylvania that have been doing file reviews. They're either totally inaccurate of what actually happened, or the information isn't there. And who was our number one ally? Our governor for the drilling industry. Do you think he wasn't putting the pressure on the DEP to back off? That's exactly what was happening. And they state not one water well has been contaminated, and millions of wells have been drilled, or 1 million wells have been drilled, not one case of water contamination. That's a lie. And these lies have got to stop. There are people that are sick. And there are water wells around here contaminated. And we're going to prove that in the end.
Did the PADUP do any sampling while they were here?
Yes, they sampled my pond. That was another thing that they lied about. They stated, and their spokesman, Rathburn, I think is his name, said that my pond got contaminated either by a herbicide or a copper sulfate. I don't use copper sulfate or herbicides. My neighbor doesn't. And the golf course, who's like a mile or a mile and a half away, could use that. But guess what? When my pond, when the vegetation died, I followed the stream that feeds my pond, which comes from my neighbor and from the golf course. I went to the very last pond at the golf course. Everything in that pond was fine. The vegetation was green. My pond was a total different color. And what you have to realize, I worked on a golf course for 5 years. They told me that my water, that after they tested my water, that the acidity level was very high. Well, if the acidity level was high at the golf course, they used the water up there for irrigation. It would burn the greens. It would burn the fairways. And my effluent coming out of the overflow pipe, the stream coming down through here was black like velvet. The whole bottom of it, from bank to bank, looked like black velvet. The back of the pond was not the stream that feeds the influent was fine. wasn't black. And I pointed that out to him. I showed it to the DEP guy and Range Resources guy. Oh, they're standing there with their hands behind their back. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, we don't know what that's from. I said, hey, guys, you did something wrong here, and you're covering it. It was never like this, ever. And I said, when I was up on that location and I saw the black water in the flow pit, and I said everything was coming down off of that location because it was raining, it was mud, and I had mud almost 2 feet deep at the back of the pond, and that was just going right into the pond. And that silt was building up back there over a foot deep, back in the back end of the pond. I said, whatever you're using, I said, it's going right into my pond. And I said, I'm not familiar. Why is that black? And that's when one guy said, oh, it's all biodegradable. And that's when I told the one guy, who he was, I don't know. I said, if it's biodegradable, I said, why don't you get a cup and take a cup of that and drink it? Well, I can't do that. I said, well, you just said it's biodegradable. And then I saw chemicals coming on here with Gulla number 7. There were these vats that they had up there, these plastic containers, and it had a skull and crossbones on it. I didn't take a picture. Same thing with that water up there. It was black. So, and I brought the same case up with a guy up there that was working. And this was after they were rigged down and they were moving it off the location to another new location. They were cleaning up, and I said, why is that water black? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, I don't know. And a lot of those guys don't know. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a job. And the sad part of it is, I feel for those guys because they don't know what they've been exposed to, and they don't know what's going to happen to their health down the road. Mm-hmm. And that's just like me talking to the individual right before you came that called me. His wife is 52 years old, and her memory is gone now. She's got lost memory, and she was painting these tanks. And he said she got deathly sick on up the road here, a mile up the road. They had a compressor station up there, but they were also extracting a liquid propane. They were extracting the propane out. Mm-hmm. But no one knew they were doing that, not even our township supervisors. They just thought it was a compressor plant. Mm-hmm. And she said she was up there working, and she got deathly sick. So he's asking me, he said, do you think any of this might have... He asked me if I knew exactly what was coming out of those tanks. And I told him, the little bit that I know, and I told him to check out Dish, Texas, and Mayor Calvin Tillman. I said, type it in on the internet, and I said, you'll see. Mm-hmm. You got to start connecting the dots here. Because the people I've talked to, a few people that I know that have been living around these compressor stations, and plus Mayor Calvin Tillman coming in, and the issues that they had in Dish, Texas, how people were getting sick, and then they did a sample of 28 people, took blood and urine and everything that they found. Well, I told this fellow that, and he's alarmed now. Mm-hmm. And he's been working around these sites. He's a contractor. Mm-hmm. Just does cleanup work and stuff like that. Now he's panicking about his own health. So I took his name and number.
Have you yourself experienced any ill health effects?
I don't know if it was just from the stress, because the stress that they put me through was just absolutely phenomenal. But I had problems last year with my arms. I lost strength in my arms for some unknown reason. I don't know. Was it coming from a disc? I didn't have any problems with a disc in my neck. Nothing was hurting. And there were also times several years back, 2-3 years back, where at least several years back, my heart didn't feel right. It just, and again, I kept thinking it's the stress. It's just stress. But now I learned. A neighbor, folks that you'll be talking to down the road here, you'll meet them today. Mm-hmm. These gals are all in good shape. Thin,